Here's Shed. Off the window, no. Roberts tried to get it. Shed for the win. Got it. Jamal Shed plays the hero again.
Back to pass. Donovan Smith. Smith steps up in the pocket, unloads it, throws it all the way downfield into the end zone. Tip, and it is caught. Caught by the Cougars. Caught for a touchdown. Unbelievable. Caught by Stephon Johnson.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby. Yes!
Welcome to the Scott Holland Podcast. Back here, and we make a point here to talk as many Cougar sports as we could fit into an episode. I think we pride ourselves on not just being a one or two sport Cougar podcast and really trying to give you, the listener, the whole picture, if you want it, of what's going on in the athletic department. But I think U of H men's basketball winning its second, or at least at this point, clinching a share of, I would say very, very much going to be inevitable that the Cougars win the whole thing outright here in the next week or so. In 2 seasons of Big 12 men's basketball, not even 2 finished seasons, the Cougars have 2 Big 12 men's basketball titles, a number that nearly no other Big 12 program has reached, that programs that have been here since 1996 have not reached. I think it behooves all of us, you, Bobby, myself, to realize that we are living in the glory days right now of Cougar men's basketball, that the consistency, there are so few other programs out there that are as consistently excellent as what Kelvin Sampson has done here. And like me, you've been with me when this was not a consistently excellent program. This was a program where if you had told me 10 years ago, I can give you being on the bubble every season or two, I would have said, sign me up before. Just even being a bubble team, something we haven't even had to do in these last 7-8 years of Cougar men's basketball excellence. I was signed up for that. What we've lived here now, going on almost a decade, feels like a fever dream. Buddy, after 2 top 10 wins this week, where are you at? How are you feeling about Cougar men's basketball? Because I much out of the preamble, much as I love to ask you what you're up to, I think the story leads here. It's Cougar men's basketball, and it's a program that has achieved things beyond our wildest dreams.
It's utterly insane to even think about the fact that we are where we are right now. And I think any Cougar fan who was a smart Cougar fan who wasn't wearing their Cougar red colored glasses would have said this team, I mean, preseason last year, neither of the three of us picked U of H to win the conference. And here we are. Did I think we were going to come in and struggle and be like Kansas and where we'd play like Kansas? No, I didn't think we'd struggle like that. But, I did think we would be a top 3-4 team in the conference. I did not see us winning back-to-back conference titles. And it's just indescribable how it feels to be a Big 12 champion in any sport, let alone what I would argue might possibly be the marquee sport for this conference. If you're going to be good at something in this conference, if you can be really good at basketball, you're doing something well. And it's just really exciting to just come in here, and these schools who said that we weren't going to be able to compete and wait till you get to a big boy conference, schools that have one conference title like Texas Tech are just, they were barking at us like, oh, wait till you get here and you're going to see what it's like. And then to just, you
can't go into United Supermarkets Arena and beat us.
Yeah. And then we have, so, it's a nice feeling to know that these schools that have constantly little brothered us for the last 30 years are, while they may little brother us in football, they may even little brother us in baseball. The sport that this conference kind of can hang its hat on, they don't little brother us on.
And the Big 12 has other good sports. Like that is the good thing about this league. This is a top to bottom, whatever sport you want to look at, much better league than the one we came from. But I mean, this is the sport conference. This is Kansas men's basketball, Tiffany program, Baylor men's basketball, recent national champions. Like a lot of school, Arizona men's basketball as of this year. the premier program west of the Rockies. Like, this is a serious men's basketball conference, and the Cougs haven't just won it. You've won it by multiple games. Bobby, it's not even March, and we're talking about the Cougs. Like, this is the stuff we did in the AAC. And granted, that was still an accomplishment we were excited about, but I don't think I knew this team would never just come into the Big 12 and make up the numbers and slide to the middle. I knew this would be one of the Big 12's better men's basketball programs because this is a good team regardless of the conference it's in. I'm with you. I was not predicting two runaway regular season titles in 2 years and couldn't be more appreciative. So we'll talk about the two games that happened from the past week that was, starting with Saturday, hosted College Game Day, hosted a somewhat undermanned Iowa State Cyclone team. I think with the very notable exception, the 68-59 win of LJ Cryer's performance, not a vintage effort from the Cougs on Saturday against that shorthanded Cyclone team, but ultimately a 9-point win where the Cougs only trailed in the very earliest stages and took the game by the metaphorical scruff of the neck. In the final few minutes, I've had a few days to reflect on this game specifically, and I would be also the fact that we've had the Texas Tech game since then, another Cougar win, but I think I would be more concerned about Saturday's performance if the things that the Cougs did poorly in this game, you could in any way tie to season-long trends. Because the main thing you did poorly in this game was taking care of the ball, turning the ball over. And Iowa State is a very, very good defensive team, currently 9th coming this week in defensive efficiency in the country. And they're very good at turning opponents over, which they showed off against the Cougs on Saturday. That's going to happen. I think to compare this to another game, I remember when we lost by 1 at UCF over a month ago. That performance concerned me because the Cougs shot poorly from the field in that one, and UCF was by all metrics a team that wasn't good at keeping opponents from making shots. That's not the case here. To me, this is like turning the ball over 2 or 3 times in a football game against an opponent with a good defense who you know is good at forcing turnovers. And I think it's just the reality of playing a very good opponent in any sport. Bobby, I think I've talked long enough. Where are you at mentally after some days between now and the Iowa State game going final?
Yeah, I think the turnovers were definitely a problem, and one of those things that you kind of wanted to see if they translated over into the Tech game, and they kind of seem to a little bit, so you want to kind of keep an eye on that. I don't think it's anything too concerning as of yet. You know, if Cincinnati starts turning us over a ton, maybe I get a little bit more concerned, and that's not to like take a pot shot at Cincinnati or something like that, even though it kind of was. Iowa State, like you said, was missing two of their players, and it kind of showed. Cougs led by 16 in the second half. Iowa State did bounce back and clawed all the way back to make it 1. That's a little concerning. You know, one of the things that kind of has killed us throughout the season in our 4 losses is the not inability. I think this team has the ability to do it, but the fact that closing teams out in close games has kind of been a little bit of a problem. So, you know, that Auburn game, it's tough to close out Auburn. I'm not going to be like, oh man, you didn't close out Auburn when you should have. But, you know, you're up 9 in that game with 15 minutes left. They kind of claw their way back. You get it close again, and then 6 minutes left, you're up 5, and you just never really closed it out. So, Alabama kind of the same way. When you go back and you kind of look at that game, you just didn't do a great job of closing them out. Actually, you didn't even have the chance to close them out. You kind of clawed your way back, took some leads, just like I said, just not able to finish games. And so that's a little concerning. But the fact that it did get to 1 and then you kind of stepped on the gas again, step on the gas without it getting back to 1. You know what I mean? So I do like the fact that they did kind of let Iowa State back in, but then said, okay, we're done playing with our food a little bit. And won. Got to shout out, the LJ Cryer game, 28 points, 5 boards. It's tough to explain how effective and how good he was in that game. 11 of 17 shooting, just super good. Something that did happen in this game that I did think was a little interesting. You know, you look at the box score, and one person who doesn't really jump out to you is Wani Roberts. But it was clear watching that game that the defense was schemed to not let Wani score. You did not want Wani. They were trying everything to let Wani not get the ball. He was getting doubled. It was clear that they didn't want him to score. So it really did seem that Iowa State said anyone can beat us except for, but we won't let Wani beat us. And the good news was LJ Cryer steps up, puts up 28. Milo Suzan has 19, and the Cougs come away with a win versus Iowa State. So those were kind of some of the things I noticed. What about you, bud?
Yeah, we're circling back on that LJ Cryer game. Incredible performance. Because if we just even have an average LJ Cryer game on Saturday, much greater than 0% chance we're talking about a Cougar loss, or at least a Cougar win with even more heart and mouth moments in that final 2 or 3 minutes. It's been a team effort all season to get the Cougs through the month of February, still in the driver's seat to win the Big 12 regular season title. For my money, nobody's been more important, though, than Cryer. You've had standout performances from a number of other guys. That's the team's big strength, is that you have a lot of depth. You have a number of guys who on any given night can take over a game in a positive way for you. We're going to talk about Miles Uzan doing that here in not too long with the Texas Tech game, but nobody's done it more than LJ Cryer. And this is exactly what he came to this U of H program to be. Not just a go-to guy offensively, though he's very much been that, but somebody who affects winning, is a vital cog in a team that's not just an elite offensive team, but an elite defensive outfit as well. This was a clinic in elite shot making. He was your offense in this one. Mm-hmm. This wasn't LJ Cryer getting good shots with the offense. This was LJ Cryer bailing your offense out repeatedly late in the shot clock. Some of Milos Uzan doing that as well in the first half mainly. He had a great first half, kind of not so much in the second. But LJ Cryer was the thing that kept you from really sweating that you were going to lose this game to a shorthanded Iowa State team. You can critique the Cougar offense this game for not having a lot of consistent answers for Iowa State's defense outside of give the ball to LJ Cryer and hope something good happens. But also worth noting, give the ball to LJ Cryer and hope something good happens worked very, very well on Saturday afternoon. Not a vintage game for Milos Uzan, which kind of feels odd to say. If you look at his line, he had 19 points on 7 of 10 from the field, was a big part, as big of a part as Cryer, at the Cougs getting out to that double-digit lead at halftime. But you didn't get as much from him offensively in the second half. And when you struggle to take care of the ball like the Cougs did on Saturday, you got to look at the point guard there. He gets the biggest share of the blame. Shouldn't be all the blame, but Uzan didn't contribute positively taking care of the ball the way you might have liked it. And I think even more damning, the offense never looked cohesive in this one, which also falls back on your point guard. The offense worked, such as Cryer, Sharp, and Uzan made some tough shots, but you weren't getting good looks as a result of ball movement. You weren't getting good looks as a result of consistently cohesive offense. There was a lot of dribbling outside of the arc, guys not really moving around, and then the realization that, there's less than 10 seconds left on the clock, and somebody has to make something happen here. And thankfully, Cryer, Uzan, and Sharp at different points were able to make those tough shots. And you don't want to make this game a referendum on U of H. Every fan base thinks everything good or bad happens is a reflection of their team and not, in this case, the very good opponent wearing the gold jerseys with red lettering. But I think you also can't honestly assess this game and say it was a vintage offensive effort. Outside of, again, incredible shot making by LJ Cryer and stretches of this by Uzan and Sharp as well. Man, that last 3-pointer by Sharp, one of the loudest crowd pops I've heard from a game at the Fertitta Center this year. Yeah. So good. It just it felt like it touched the roof.
Yeah, it was that one really felt like the dagger that just kind of there are times when you just hear a you see something happen and you're like, oh, yep, that's over. It felt like U of H was really trying to was struggling to put the final nail in the coffin, and that 3 was like, okay, it's over now.
Exactly. You didn't think you were going to lose, but it was the point where you exhaled, like, we're not losing this basketball game.
Exactly.
We're not Kansas, and we're going to blow like a 7-point lead in 20 seconds here. Not us. Maybe them, not us.
Yeah, especially at home.
The performance that I think would get overlooked if you were only watching highlights or like reading the game summary or looking at the box score was Javier Francis off the bench, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. This wasn't JoJo Tugler's worst game in terms of foul trouble. He still gave you 20 minutes and was on the floor for the final few minutes of the game with 4 fouls. But I thought JVR did a really capable job spelling Tugler, gave you 24 minutes. If you want to know how much Francis has improved compared to, I think, the previous seasons, he gave you those 24 minutes, also gave you 6 rebounds and 2 block shots, whistled for 0 fouls. You love to see it.
Yep.
And this game, the officials weren't the worst whistle we've had this season, but it wasn't also a light whistle, and it was kind of frustratingly inconsistent at times. That Francis was able to play as many minutes as he did and didn't get whistled for a single foul. It speaks to how much better he is this year. We went on with our longtime friend Robert Land of the Houston Sports Talk podcast, and I would encourage you to go listen to Bobby and I's segment there if you have not already. And in one of my answers to his questions, I talked about how valuable Francis has been to this team because he's somebody who can, like, JoJo Tugler is a very unique package as a player, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that Francis can give you the freakish wingspan, that Francis can give you the plus offensive rebounding and shot blocking that Tugler does, allowing you to do this, similar things that you do in Tugler's in the court, even if he's not I think the reason JoJo Tugler is starting is I think there's a higher ceiling there that you can get a reasonable equivalent of that off the bench from Francis. There's not many guys who have JoJo Tugler's skill set. And I think it's one of those things that we overlook, but I think is incredibly valuable.
No, I absolutely agree. That was a good performance by JV Francis there. Like you said, you're not really going to see it jump off the page at you. 2.6 rebounds. Or I'm sorry, that's the Texas Tech game. You see his.
I think he did actually have 2 points and 6 rebounds in this one.
So you just kind of look at. Sorry, I was on the wrong tab. Yep, 2.6 rebounds.
I think he did that. I had the exact line in both games.
That's hilarious.
I didn't realize that.
That's hilarious. Yeah, he did. Sorry about that. But 2.6 boards. Again, like you said, doesn't jump out at you, but you can really see the Tugler Francis combo is something you see them playing well with each other and spelling each other, and a lot of them are playing. They are playing a lot alike in the sense that it doesn't feel like one is substantially better or different. The offense doesn't change. The defense doesn't change. They both are rim protectors who can get up and challenge you at the rim. Like, you're really seeing that they're kind of the same player. And it almost feels like you can combine their stat lines and be like, this player had a really good game. And it's both of them acting as one. And you get 10 fouls out of that really good player.
And I think also the things you can't quantify in the box score, like shots change, you're not going to try to put up a bunch of shots against those guys. And I know both of them were on the roster last year, but they've improved so much over last season to this season. Fully agree with you. I don't know where to put this in our summary of the game. I had to say it though, Bobby, Iowa State's Josh Jefferson had one of the crazier stat lines you will ever see in a college basketball game this year. 4 points on 1 of 9 shooting, but also 8 assists, 7 steals, 4 rebounds, 2 block shots, and 3 fouls. That's just an insane level of activity. Jefferson was also the
and
first
4 turnovers.
4 turnovers. I can't believe I didn't have that. And again, 8 assists and 7 steals for a big man like that. He's their starting power forward. Iowa State player to miss a free throw as well after they made their first 15.
I didn't even notice that.
It was again. I love me a crazy stat line, and I had to shoehorn this into our summary of the game.
Yeah, that is pretty nuts. That is absolutely insane.
Also glad we didn't lose 2 college game day appearances in a row.
Yeah, dang it.
You're what? No, you're saying like you don't like us having game day?
No, I'm saying I'm glad we didn't lose 2 in a row too.
Oh, my bad. I mean, we're talking about a sample size of 2, but I mean, this team rarely loses at home. It would have been notable if this one and your first appearance back in 2019 against UCF were both losses. Quick trivia question for you, because I had to look this exact number up myself, and I did not know it exactly. Without cheating, how many games, Bobby, has Cougar men's basketball lost at the Fertitta Center since the opening in the fall of 2018? I got this wrong. I will fully admit I was one off on this when I guessed.
4?
7. If the Cougars had lost on Saturday, the game day losses would have made up 25% of all men's basketball home Fertitta Center losses. So grateful, if nothing else, that that wasn't the case, even if this one wasn't an A+ all-around effort. You got to win your clunkers, and even at not full strength, Iowa State is still one of the better opponents to come to this arena this season.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, we had a big Monday win by your Cougars last night in Lubbock over the Texas Tech Raiders, a 69-61 win. First off, got to give a big shout to Texas Tech's JT Toppin for not in the second game in a row accidentally kicking anyone in the jimmies. Really proud of the guy. You got to give it to him. But to the actual game itself, I will leave the smack talk for a little later in this segment. Once again, the Cougars went to a rabid and full opposing arena for a nationally televised road game. Granted, against an opponent who was a little shorthanded, but in what Fran Fraschilla called, and I make fun of Fran Fraschilla a lot, but I take him at face value when he says this, the loudest venue that he's been to at a game this season. Certainly felt like it. That's the one unabashed compliment I will give them. That sounded like a really, really loud.
Yeah,
arena.
absolutely it did.
But your Cougars won.
But you know, when it's your Super Bowl, everyone shows up.
That's true. I guess I was gonna say it's the second losing Super Bowl that Patrick Mahomes has been physically present for this season. Bob, did you know Patrick Mahomes didn't even go to a bowl game his last year? Didn't even come close to winning a Big 12 title.
That's interesting. I feel like I did know that. I feel like I did know that. He's played in more Super Bowls in 2025 than he played bowl games in 4 years at Texas Tech. That's interesting.
I think he actually played in one bowl game. I'm not trying to actually.
No, I don't think he did.
I swear, not his junior year, they did not. They had a losing record his junior year. I swear his second to last year. We're off to a great start here, but I've got to know for sure.
Okay. Yeah, they played Kansas. No, hold on.
I'm looking at Cliff Kingsbury's Wikipedia. I think that's the quickest way to get an answer to our question because he was the coach at Texas Tech at the time.
The 2015, he played in the 2015 Texas Bowl.
He did. Shout to Pat Mahomes losing the 2015 Texas Bowl, but
by a lot too.
To an actual athletic contest that has some import. Bobby, it doesn't get much better than this Cougar win. Let me know your big takeaways from the win last night up in Lubbock.
I have some, but the biggest thing that I can say is this will go down in Cougar history as the Milo Suzan game. What a game. Guy just showed up. The absolute dagger the eyes, not dagger. After he made the dagger 3 and the look he gave Sampson, you go, oh, this team is different than it was when the season started. You and I were having a conversation about this. There isn't a team in NCAA basketball that I don't think the Cougs can't beat this year. I think there's been, last year I kind of felt that way, but I am all in on this team winning the national championship this year. Yes, Auburn is good, and yes, they beat us in a semi-home game, a quasi-home game over at Toyota Center. Yes, I get that. I totally get that. But in that game, you had kind of an unhealthy Tugler, Francis, the Milo Suzan that we're seeing now is wildly different than the one we saw early in the season. And this game kind of solidified it for me. Just watching it, you saw 22 for Milos. I think the defense of this team is really good. Again, the thing that is starting to concern me a little bit is the number of turnovers. We had 9 in this game. That's not great.
That many turnovers.
It's not a ton, right? And you won the turnover battle.
You're just trying to shoehorn a narrative. I'm sorry. Finish.
I don't necessarily disagree that I'm trying to shoehorn in a narrative here, but Milos plays great. I think more what I'm looking at is the turnovers to assist. 12-9. You had 12 assists, 9 turnovers. That's not great. You don't love that. But overall, I think it's just this team is one of the better ones in the country. Not that anyone here needs to hear that. Not that I'm shocked by that, but I would put this team up there, and I think I would bet U of H straight up versus any team in the country right now.
I'm on board with you there. I think we're of the same mind. And I have seen some very, very good U of H teams. I don't know if I would have said it as definitively as you and I are saying it any other year.
I think maybe last year.
UConn was so good last year, though. I'm not saying we couldn't have hung with them, but also you saw the way they ran to the national title. I wouldn't have bet money. I wouldn't have bet money on the way you are now. And we saw the Auburn team, who right now has the number one, deservedly, the number one team in a poll. They're number one in any metric you look at because they have the best resume in the sport. And you played them insanely close with Milos Uzan playing so much worse than he is right now. Your big men less healthy, and you play them about as close as you can play them. I'm not guaranteeing that we beat them, but I wouldn't bet against the Cougs there. And Uzan is doing something that even I would say myself as a charter member of the Cougar fans Milos Uzan fan club, I would have thought it was unthinkable as recently as January that he's making an all-conference case for himself with one of the best Februaries, I would say, of any player in the Big 12 right now. You look at the Cougs' 3 highest profile road wins in Big 12 play. That's at Kansas, at Arizona, and last night at Texas Tech. Uzan was the KenPom MVP of all 3 of those games. Now, I will say for the Kansas game, the rightful game MVP is Malik Wilson, but the larger point is that in these 3 huge Big 12 road wins, Uzan was undebatably either your best player or one of your best players. 22 points, 3 of 4 on 3-point field goals, including that absolute dagger that you mentioned, led you with 2 steals. And just watching this game, you saw him do such a good job harassing whatever Tech guy he drew defensively, getting his hands on balls, getting into the passing lanes. It's just so much better than what we saw in November. It's crazy how much he has improved. And I think file this under potentially overlooked stuff, but he's got that floater going. He had another almost highlight reel. It was an up and under where he went coast to coast right before halftime. Just went off the rim there, but he's got that up and under going. Like, that's something he's working on, and he adds that to his game. By March, is able to get that in consistently. He had one against Arizona that was really nice as well. We're talking about a guy who's unguardable.
Yeah.
And when he was talking to Chris Budden immediately after the game, Uzan talked about how there are so many different guys who are capable of stepping up on this team, capable of making shots when needed. And I believe in his words, he described it that the Tech game was his night, but that other nights it's going to be LJ Cryer, Emmanuel Sharp, or Wani Roberts. And I think that's why we're both so high on this team. We saw on Saturday, it could be LJ Cryer carrying this offense with Uzan helping out. Last night it was Uzan with Roberts and Sharp picking their spots. U of H has had teams with better pro prospects or guys like Jamal Shed who I would say accomplish more individually than any player on this current year's team will be able to. And certainly I think worth underlining that if Jamal Shed doesn't go out hurt against Duke, I think that's a Final Four team. But I don't think Sampson's had any teams in his U of H tenure with the volume, the number of different veteran guys who can help you in a basketball game like we saw last night. I mean, it was poetic, Bobby, that Roberts, after missing a key free throw in the OT loss to Tech in Houston, that he went 10 of 12 from the free throw line in Lubbock when you needed every one of those freebies. That was so cool.
Mm-hmm. And to shoot that well from the line, considering what some people were yelling at him in that scum-ass fan base of theirs.
Yeah. Wasn't his best night shooting the ball. I think Tech, like Iowa State, did a good job keeping Roberts from making shots, but he made the Red Raiders pay when you needed him to.
Yep. That's all you can ask for from your point guard here.
And this is your first time really seeing JT's hopping in the current season because of his aforementioned kicking a JoJo Tugler in the jimmies and getting ejected from the game in Houston. And Tauben's been having one of the best seasons of anyone in the college game. And you wouldn't say he had no impact on this game, but as an opposing fan, you will take 6 of 18 shooting from him all day, any day. He got points. He had 10 rebounds, but he did not get there efficiently. He rarely had easy looks, and this game was a reminder of what a damn good defensive outfit Houston Cougar men's basketball is.
Yeah, it's if this team can go against big men who have beat other teams soundly, and they do this against JT Toppin, once again, this team can be very dangerous for against a lot of teams.
Some other game stuff here. I didn't have a kind of miscellany that I didn't have a category for. LJ Cryer made a play that embodied what I said a moment ago about different guys stepping up and guys affecting winning in so many different ways. Didn't have a good shooting night in this one, but he won a 50-50 ball for an offensive rebound to give the Cougs a second chance on a possession where Emmanuel Sharp ended up making a three. It was those two possessions where Sharp hit back-to-back 3-pointers. I think Tech called a timeout somewhere in there. Again, one made basket in a game with lots of them, but it was a reminder that even this team's leading scorer type guys are willing to do the dirty work. It was also a really nice first game back in Lubbock from Malik Wilson, who played in the 21-22 season with the Red Raiders. It was a classic Malik Wilson game, 6 points and 3 boards and a whole lot of toughness. There was this great sequence where he loses the ball, not so great, but immediately gets it back in the other end, even as Tech had numbers and was trying to push in transition. I know from our in-game text, this wasn't your favorite Javier Francis performance, but I got to highlight this. He had a big, and I think, by the way, your text was before this, he had a big block of JT Toppin.
Yes.
Inside 2 minutes. You probably had in your notes when he was in for Tugler with about 2 minutes left in this game. Wasn't game deciding, but it was a big situation.
Yes. There. I just, when I said that it wasn't Javier Francis's best game, he looked very confused defensively a lot of this game, and offensively. He just didn't seem to be very quick getting around screens and that kind of stuff. That's not to say that he didn't make a couple of good plays here and there. Just not a game that I thought Javier Francis looked very good in.
I would agree there offensively. I still think he gave you the rebounding and shot changing stuff that Javier generally gives you, but I wouldn't disagree with that assessment offensively. He did make his one shot he attempted, but yeah, I think I would agree. But that's also not his game necessarily.
Yeah, and then just one more thing that I kind of wanted to point out about the game in general was you could really see late in the game when the Cougs started to pull away, and I'm not trying to take anything away from the Cougs here. You could see that 6-man rotation was just tired. They were a tired bunch. Now, again, I think U of H wins this game even if those two guys are in. I think they had the opportunity to rally around the injuries and do things like that, and that gave them a boost early on. But you could see late in the game when the Cougs, I think, went up 9 around that. You could definitely see Texas Tech tiring. They started to get a little sloppy. Shots were starting to hit the front rim, things like that. So you could definitely see it, but, injuries are kind of part of the game, No
doubt. And Tech was somewhat shorthanded, but I'll say unlike the Iowa State game, this looked more like you would have hoped on the road, but against a team missing some key guys than maybe how the Iowa State game looked. You led, I would say, the last 31 minutes of this game, and ultimately, not saying there weren't points in the final few minutes that would be stressful, but ultimately close this opponent out after that was in the early part of the season such a problem for you to close out quality competition. You've become quite good at doing it.
Absolutely.
All right. Have we covered the game itself enough, Bobby, to our respective satisfactions so that can we get to the Red Raider fans here for a moment? Can we get to the Texas Tech fan base? Can we talk a little shit?
Let's go.
Before I say anything else, I want to say I'm glad being in the Big 12 affords us matchups where we can play opponents where there's real animus, that there's real sports hate between the fan bases, because you didn't get a lot of those in the CUSA and AAC days. Maybe Memphis here and there. Briefly Cincinnati, but not really. I think U of H Tech men's basketball games will be appointment viewing now for years to come. I think that's going to be a game with some real sports fan hatred.
I think as long as both teams are good.
Yeah, I think so. I texted one of the two friends from high school I was looking up with, a Texas A&M alumnus, and I apologized to him for ever not taking his dislike of the Tech fan base more seriously, because what a scummy bunch of people.
Just terrible.
He's a pussy chant at Roberts. It's not that I'm on my fainting couch about the language here, man. But yeah, I can be profane here, often on the podcast. I think it's just revealing of a fan base that doesn't know any ball. Because you wouldn't see Kansas fans, you wouldn't see Iowa State fans, just to use two examples, chanting that at Roberts, because like them or not at times, and I go to the not as often as you do, those fan bases know ball. Those fan bases know that, like, I don't want to fire this guy up. I don't want to, target this guy specifically. And the student section all wearing t-shirts with that smirking little shit Grant McCaslin with that tweet from their 1 point lucky overtime win in Houston, saying toughest team wins. Doing that against this Cougar team, buddy, bold strategy. And nothing filled my heart with joy like the Cougs writing back-to-back Big 12 champs and toughest team won on the visitors' locker room whiteboard.
It was just the fans were atrocious. I agree. It was loud with Fran Francilla. It was loud, and I can respect them for that. But wow, what giant pieces of shit. Just never been so happy to beat a team there in their house, and watching them as they foul, and then we're kind of, they foul us and we're at the line, and then in the background just, it's blurry because they're focusing on the U of H player hitting free throws too in the game, and for the Cougs to win the Big 12 championship in 2025. They were focusing on our players hitting those free throws, but in the background you see little droves of black just walking up the stairs. Oh, so good. Leaving the game early. Oh,
doing it the chef's
just it was fantastic. And I think I texted you this, and like, imagine, Sam, that you live in a place like Lubbock that smells terrible. There's nothing to do. All you have is this university. And you think, you have this guy, you have your little brother in Houston. You think you have a little brother in Houston that you beat at everything. You're better at him than everything. For some reason, even though they got better grades in school than you did, they are higher ranked than you. Everyone still thinks you're a better university. And then, like, you're better at just about everything. And then, but you have another big brother who, like, suns you in everything, right? And you've decided you're going to put money into a program. And you're like, we're going to put money into our football team. We're going to put money into our basketball team. And the school that constantly beats us at this is down. Kansas is down. Texas, our big brother, is finally leaving, and we're gonna be the ones now. We're gonna run Texas. And then in 2 years, your little brother comes in and beats you soundly, owns the championship. You thought it was going to be yours because your big brother is gone. He went off and did bigger, better things. And then the guy who lives across the street in Kansas, they're down. They're not doing so hot. This is our chance. And then here comes your little brother. The people you think are your little brother come knocking on the door. And then there you are, just the middle child. Just the middle child that everyone ignores. The joke is everyone ignores the middle child. And then you're so desperate to be good at something that you spend like $3 million in NIL for softball. It's great.
Very, very fun.
It's great. Couldn't happen to a better group of people.
Really couldn't. The booing and chanting "ref, you suck." Again, I'm not offended by it, but when you had a good margin, more free throws in the game, and U of H got a much tougher second half whistle, very, very funny. No self-awareness there to speak of.
Yeah, I saw a Tech fan tweet something about like, oh, the refs have missed some calls tonight, and I'm looking and it's 7-3 on fouls, and I was like, what? Like, I'm not saying it has to be 50-50, right? But like, what?
Just don't know how you can look at that game and feel wrong by the officiating. Oh, so also there are parts of West Texas. I want to preface what I'm saying. There are parts of West Texas that are some of the most gorgeous places in the state. Guadalupe Mountains National Park, that's out kind of by the New Mexico border in far West Texas, has the state's tallest mountains, some absolutely great hiking trails. I went out there in 2018, one of the best trips I've done. Big Bend, Marfa, Terlingua. I am more partial to El Paso than most, but the Panhandle, irredeemably shitty part of the state. It's spiritually more Oklahoma than Texas, and nothing of value to the state would be lost if we just gave all of that back. Like everything north of like Midland, because we need the oil there. Like I know the Panhandle has some. There's some person who actually knows oil and gas that's just screaming their podcast app at what an ignoramus I am here. But in my opinion. I mean, oh no, what would Texas do without Lubbock and Amarillo? And Bobby, I've been to East Texas. I've been to Beaumont several different times, and Lubbock is still absolutely the top of my list of irredeemable shitholes in Texas. I mean, they inspire a level of dislike in me that I was hoping would develop organically between the fan bases or between U of H and some fan base from feisty games in the court. And I would say it certainly has now. And I appreciate them for that. And also for allowing us to clinch a second straight Big 12 title. Bobby, did you know in 29 years of competing in Big 12 men's basketball, Tech has only done that once?
Huh.
What we've done in 2 years. Interesting, huh?
Wow. So what you're saying is we have doubled the amount of Big 12 championships that they have in basketball in 2 years, what they haven't been able to do in 30. Is that what you're saying?
I just went a little old U of H here, but that's my math tells me that's 27 fewer years, give or take, of competing in men's basketball. Interesting.
That is interesting. I would have never thought. I would have thought that if you were in a conference for that long, you'd have like 28 conference championship games.
Oh, I just thought like 3 or 4. Yeah, I know Kansas has been pretty good, but I would figure, oh, you guys have all this oil money and stuff, and I would forget 3 or 4, not just one. Interesting. And that coach that left, that led you to that one, he left for UT, right? I think I got the details there, huh?
Huh.
Real sad.
That's interesting. No, and I just want to say one more kind of funny thing. Did you happen to watch the Kelvin Sampson post game?
I have not. You were very good at watching it. I'm very bad about. So
I just want to say he was talking about the great coaches that have come through Texas Tech since he's been in the game. 2 James Dickey shout-outs from Kelvin Sampson in the post-game presser. And if there's one person I know who would appreciate that, it's you.
I mean, like that Tech team he had, which was actually they won the last Southwest Conference men's battle, was legitimately amazing.
Yeah,
and I guess James Dickey sold his soul to the devil because he never had like a good basketball team after that. But like, but that Tech team was legitimately like one of the best in the country. And I remember when he was hired, it's like, yeah, he coached that team. I was like, okay, well, surely he's coached a good team since 1996. It was just like, oh, not so much. And then we didn't get any in 4 years he was here.
Yeah.
So this coming week on Saturday, we have the penultimate home game of the season. Where does the time go? And a familiar face in the Cincinnati Bearcats. By no definition are the Bearcats a bad team. They're just outside the national top 50 in KenPom. They're 44th nationally in the net rankings coming into the week. None of that is anything close to a bad team. They're top 25 nationally in defensive efficiency. They're a veteran team, one of the tallest in the country. But if you go to bracketmatrix.com right now, and I would encourage Cougar fans who are interested in this kind of thing to go there and not look at guys like Joe Lunardi and Jerry Palm, who are objectively terrible at predicting the bracket. You go to bracketmatrix.com, Bobby, not a single person projecting the bracket at anything from major sports outlets to a website that hasn't updated its design since 1998. And funny enough, the latter category there is usually the best at predicting the bracket. Nobody has Cincy in the projected tournament field of 68 right now as you recorded. And that's why I would call this year's Cincy team a disappointment, because that's a preseason top 25 team. It's a program also where the standard for Cincinnati Bearcats men's basketball is the NCAA tournament. This is their premier athletic program. I know they've been better at football in the last 5 or 6 years. They support football well. I'm not impugning that. But men's basketball is Cincinnati's first love. And I think despite their patience with head coach Wes Miller, I mean, he's now deep into year 4 and barring a miraculously good finish of the season or catching fire in Kansas City for the postseason tournament, this is looking like for the Cincinnati program, I don't know why it was so hard to say for me, a 5th straight season of them not going to March Madness. And I think that's not good enough when you're a team that is supported as well as Cincy and when you were in the preseason top 25. But again, to what I said a moment ago, it's a team that's good in a number of key areas. And one actually we saw in this game against this opponent last season at Fertitta Center, actually the last 2, because remember 2 seasons ago, Landers and Ollie just went nuclear on us and we had to come back to win that one. A team capable of stressing out the Cougars. Bobby, what have you learned about the Bearcats?
Yeah, Cincinnati, good top 25 defense. So, the Cougars are not going to want to have those lulls, and Cincinnati can stop you from scoring, right? Like I said, top 25 defense. Where they're going to struggle is on the offensive side. On the offensive side, barely top 100. I would imagine they're going to struggle pretty heavily with this U of H defense. So I'm really hoping with this game being at home, the Cougs come in tonight on Saturday and are able to secure their full share of the Big 12 title. Same guy that we saw last year, Jizzle James, is going to come in averaging 12.4 points a game. I do think our guards are going to be able to, I don't want to say shut him down, but, doesn't exactly scare me to death.
I would agree. To me, one guy on the Cincinnati team kind of embodies their season. One of their first-year transfers, Dylan Mitchell. And if that's a familiar name to you, he played last season and the season before at UT Austin, started both of the Cougar Longhorn games last season. Big time recruit. Was the number 8 guy in his entire class, the class of 2022. Started, I think, like I said, nearly all of his 2 seasons with the Longhorns and had flashes of greatness there. But there's also a reason why he's not with that program anymore. He couldn't harness it consistently enough. And his 2 games against the Cougars last season, I think, are a great demonstration of that. The first game in Austin, the one the Cougs won in OT, Mitchell's one of the most impactful guys in either team, had 16 points on 7 of 13 from the field, also 10 boards in 33 minutes. The return game in Houston, he was barely there. He had 3 points total, barely impacted the game in any way. And Mitchell's had his moments this season. He had 19 points a few weeks ago in the Bearcats' decisive win at UCF. On Saturday, he had 13 points and 12 boards in a home win over TCU. Hasn't been a bad player this season, but if you were hoping that Wes Miller and this staff were going to figure out how to get more out of him than UT Austin staff did, you haven't really seen it. And I would say this Bearcat team has been better at times in the month of February, though they did open this month by losing at home to West Virginia by 13. They did soundly defeat a red-hot BYU team at home a few weeks ago, so they've had their moments. They've been kind of a problem team for the Cougs, even though the 2 games referring to there are both wins. It's not going to be like for a lot of teams, even if it's not their first trip to the Fertitta Center. Since he's been going here for many years. So if nothing else, it's not really a new experience. And a lot of these guys were on last year's Cincy team that gave the Cougs a lot of problems at home. We'll be curious. Seamus Lukosius, he's their starting power forward, is a stretch 4, has started every game. He's been healthy for the Bearcats this season. He's missed the previous 2 games coming into the week. I think whether he plays on Saturday or not will be important. You mentioned Jizzle James, son of Edgerrin James. Definitely feeling old saying that. Aziz Bendago is a 7-footer who's a plus shot blocker and rebounder, but is not going to really do much offensively. Last note, if you're done with the Bearcats team, because I just a funny U of H Cincy thing, if you'll allow me.
I was just going to say one more thing.
Yeah, go for it,
in
man.
their
Go
schedule that kind of caught my attention. If you want any idea of how good this team can be defensively and how bad they can be offensively, Sam, when they hosted Kansas, do you know the score of that game?
No, actually. I know lots of random stuff, not that.
Kansas traveled to Cincinnati and won by 14 with a final score 54-40.
That's crazy.
That's an insane
I remember
number.
that. As soon as I wouldn't have been able to pull that, but I remember that now that you said it.
54-40. That is an insane number. They have scored in Big 12 play. They have a game where they have scored 48. They scored 40. They have a 52 in here. They have a 50. It's insane.
90 something against UCF. I think it was like 93 against UCF, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's just, yeah, they scored 93 against UCF, but just like, you just look at their point totals and you're just like, when they win, they score a ton, but then they'll put up 40 in a game, which is an absolutely insane number to put up.
The head-to-head series in this one is kind of wild as well, since he still has a 33-16 lead as of recording. Most of that is from the Conference USA and early AAC days when Cincy was somewhere between elite and very good, and U of H was decidedly neither of those things. Though they did have some 60s and 70s wins over Guy v. Lewis era U of H did miss U of H of the Phi Slamma Jamma era. Coming to this one, Bobby, U of H has won 11 straight in the series.
Wow.
And that's a crazy stat. Like this,
that is crazy.
This run will end at some point, but I don't think it'll be this Saturday. It's crazy to see how much the all-time series has changed between these two teams.
Yeah, that is insane when you really think about it. I remember when this game was like oh man, this is the one. It's going to be tough this year. Can we get the win, etc.
I get goosebumps talking about that 2018 game at TSU.
Yeah,
hosting them. That was that win. We punched that ticket to the NCAAs that year. That really got in the right side of the bubble, beating the. It felt like a moment in time. Like even like right after the win, I was just like, we're a serious basketball program. We beat them in 2018 because that was a very good Cincy team.
Yeah, it just kind of blows my mind that we've won 11 straight against them.
And on Monday, for the second week in a row, the Cougs will be part of a big Monday ESPN game. This time we'll be at home, though, against the Kansas Jayhawks for the Cougs' senior day and final home game. It has not been a good February for Kansas, Bobby. What have you learned about the Jayhawks since that absurd win at Fog Allen Fieldhouse last month?
The BYU game is absolutely mind-blowing. Like, I was listening to a podcast and even everyone on it was like, what the hell happened there? Like, that BYU game is absolutely insane. I think since you kind of heard their coach, Bill Self, talking about how they just needed a hard reset. I think his quote, they said it on that same podcast, was, we just don't need to be around each other. I think that happens sometimes with teams, is you just kind of get tired of seeing the same people and competing against the same people. And for the first time, that team looked like it gave up versus BYU. And it looked like Bill Self gave up. That they were just beaten into oblivion, as crazy as that sounds. But with that being said, they're still Kansas. They were still preseason number one. Like you said, bad February, lost to Kansas State. Just, it hasn't been good for them. But they haven't looked terrible in many games except for that BYU one. They haven't looked good in a lot of games either. But, it's nice as a Houston fan to kind of see them with 10 conference wins, a full 6 games back of U of H in the conference standings.
Last week when we previewed Iowa State, one of the things I talked about was that the Cyclones were an elite team at home and simply very good in a way, neutral site kind of situations. I was actually surprised that Kansas was as high as 46th nationally.
Yeah.
Because they're 3-7 in true road situations. But still, behind USC, North Texas, and Xavier, teams that are, I think, pretty unlikely to be in March Madness. You mentioned the 34-point loss to BYU. Very bad, but also BYU has rounded into being a very good team. One that is basically in everyone's bracket, one that is playing much better now than they were a month or so ago.
Oh, yeah.
To me, losing to a Utah team that this week fired their coach, and I remember after it was the night game of the same day we beat Arizona. I caught the end of it after I got home from the drive back from Tucson. I remember like seeing Kansas lose that game to Utah, and just a bunch of Utah fans afterwards being like, well, I'm glad we won, but I don't even think we played particularly well. So lose to a Utah team that everyone is like checked out, and just, you saw how Utah looked against the Cougs.
Yeah.
Like that was a bad basketball team, and Kansas lost to them. I know they're better in Salt Lake City. I know the Cougs probably it was a snowball thing with them, but them losing by as much as they did to BYU, it was shocking, Bobby. But I think them losing to BYU didn't shock me so much in the abstract as losing that Utah team as well. Just really having a rough month.
Yeah.
If I could zoom out, because I think we kind of know this team pretty well, and I thought this was a kind of interesting big picture point.
Yeah.
Kansas men's basketball, to me, they kind of represent, it's a quote unquote problem of abundance in the NIL era. Because you would think, now that you can pay players out in the open, that it would never be easier to win at a high level at Kansas, right? You could sell players on playing for a still recent national champion, one of the most accomplished coaches in the sport in Bill Self, nice facilities, and one of the very best home court atmospheres out there, if not the best, and you're able to get paid very, very handsomely. And yet I think that's actually the biggest problem right now with Kansas. And I'm not naive or saying this in an accusatory manner. Kansas was probably finding ways to compensate guys previously.
Right.
But compensation still wasn't previously as big a part of the recruiting pitch as it is now. And to my outsider perspective, in my opinion, Kansas is getting guys who are more in love with the peripherals, the big NIL packages, the adulation that comes with playing for one of the Sports Tiffany programs, rather than getting guys who want to win hardware, guys who want to be a part of it, a team that competes for a natty and in some cases develop into having a long professional career. Kansas used to get those guys. They're not getting them right now. I mean, they had the number 3 transfer class this offseason, Bobby. I went back and looked at it in 247. Out of all those guys, only Zeke Mayo, in my opinion, has had a consistently positive impact, or at least somewhat consistently positive impact on the current season. Rylan Griffin comes in for Bama, had a nice game against the Cougs last time these teams faced, but has been mostly invisible otherwise. AJ Storr was one of the highest rated transfers in the entire country, and he's broken double digits twice scoring in Big 12 play. I would bet any sum of money that you allow me, Bobby, that Storr will not be with Kansas after the season. And this all goes back to that problem of abundance. You want your program to have the peripherals, the NIL, the good facilities, the good conference to compete in. You want to have all that, enough necessary to recruit high-level players, whether it's through high school or the portal. But if you have the level of abundance that Kansas has, you kind of start getting the guys who are more in love with those peripherals than I think the psychotic amount of dedication that it takes to win at a high level in the sport. This was UT football's problem, I think, for a number of years after that Vince Young national title team, a problem of abundance. I don't know the young men on this team personally. I can't speak to their character, but I don't think you can look at Kansas being the preseason number 1 and all the talent on this year and last year's Kansas teams, and then how poorly they've done relative to that, and fundamentally disagree with my broader point here. Not guaranteeing that Monday night will be a repeat of last year's blowout home win, but also I don't see a scenario where this is close.
I mean, I can always see a scenario where it's close just because Kansas is still Kansas. They were preseason number 1 team. They have the talent there, but I agree with a lot of things you were saying about this team and all of that. Just a little plug for myself. If anyone's selling a ticket to the Kansas game, I want to be there for it, and I'm willing to pay for it. So, sorry, just a little plug there.
Look at this guy.
shpodcast@gmail.com.
at number 1 Coug on Twitter,
Yes.
number 1 Coug.social. I think I've covered all the bases there.
Yep. I think we're good.
Start reading your personal email and you're like, no, stop.
It wouldn't bother me, to be honest. Everyone and their mother has that email at this point. You can find it pretty easy if you just search my name.
That's fair. All right, so we'll transition from one of U of H's best programs in Cougar men's basketball to one of its other best programs. We're going to the Cougar track and field program because the Cougs will be going to another Cougar program going to Lubbock. That was my other transition point I guess I could have done as well, but going to Lubbock to compete in the Big 12 Indoor Track and Field Championships, which will be held on Friday and Saturday. I would imagine the host, Texas Tech, who won both the men's and women's indoor Big 12 titles last year, will be the favorites to repeat. I am personally more focused on the outdoor season and championship, but got to talk about it from one of your premier programs. Last season, if you'll recall, the Cougar men finished 6 out of 12 teams. The Cougar women finished 11th out of 14. And I think by my memory, both of those results lined up with what we expected, Dustin and I, and you did coming in. Because the NCAA Indoor Championships don't have a prelim event between this and that event like outdoors do, this meet is actually the last chance for athletes who are kind of on the cut line of making NCAAs to put forth a qualifying level performance. And kind of like the Big 12 swim and dive preview that we did last week, we're going to give you, the listeners, our standout athletes and our relays and what have you to keep an eye on from the Cougars. So, Bobby, give me some of your top performers to watch and any other Cougar track and field thoughts you have.
Yeah, the first event that really catches my eye was the men's 60 hurdles. Jamar Marshall turned in a 7.59, which is 9th best in the country this year. And then, I kind of wanted to do one on the men's side, one on the women's side. On the women's side, I was kind of looking at the pole vault. I tried.
I know who you're gonna say, and she, I was gonna say, and I think good pick.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm stumbling is because of her name. There is no pronunciation of her name on the Cougar website.
Keep talking out. I will effort it when you're done. I think.
And And but her name is, again, we're gonna try here, Avina Pangiotou, which she's
Pretty
Greek.
close.
She's Greek. She's a freshman from Greece. Went to Phryganiotis High School in Greece, which is just kind of cool. A lot of times you see when it's when an athlete comes from overseas, they usually have an American stop that they stop in. Some school, some Greek school, or some school that specializes in overseas students. Nope. Straight from Greece as a freshman, 52nd in the country, but it has always seemed the field events have always kind of been a struggle for U of H, and has kind of been what holds them back sometimes from winning national championships or winning conference titles. And so you're getting this kind of form from a freshman. So getting a freshman pole vaulter could be big for this program going forward.
Yeah, she's definitely one to watch long term. I'm gonna mention an athlete who will not be competing, but I think because it's been a while since we talked about Cougar track during this indoor season, Keala Dove, who is the current number one performer in the women's shot put, but will be competing at the USA Track and Field Championships, not Big 12 indoors, which makes sense because she's certainly locked in to be competing at indoors, and I think USA Track and Field should be a higher priority for a potential Olympic level athlete like her. Will definitely do a deeper dive when we talk about indoors, probably an episode or two, do a deeper dive on her really impressive 2025 indoor season. I'm going to stick with the field stuff like you. On the men's side, Andrea Mita currently has the second best performance in the entire country in the men's high jump. His top performance is from the fairly recent Howie Ryan Invitational on Valentine's Day, a performance that earned Mita Big 12 Athlete of the Week honors. Mikkel Beck, also in the men's high jump, is in decent position to qualify for indoors, has the 12th best performance in the country this season. That performance also coming from the Howie Ryan Invitational. Therese Stoudemire, who I've mentioned previously, is inside the national top 40, probably needs a better performance. Not probably, definitely needs a better performance to qualify, but I think this could be a very, very good event for the Cougar men. You mentioned Jamar Marshall Jr. We'll also mention in the 60 hurdles, Anthony Trucks and Jarius Burton, who are both lower end of the national top 50 guys for their best performance. This season, Baylor and Texas Tech both have athletes ahead of Marshall in the performance list, but could absolutely be one that Marshall wins if he has a good season performance. We'll also keep an eye on the Cougar men in the 4x4 relay. I think Tech will be tough to beat, but I think the Cougs could get on the podium in the men's side. Arizona State, and BYU will be competitive there with the Cougs as well.
Yep.
And we will turn to Cougar baseball, get to the spring sports where the Cougs are coming off winning 2 of 3 in Northern California, beating the Cal Bears, took the opener on Friday night by a 6-4 final where the Cougs got out to a 6-0 lead thanks to crooked numbers in the 3rd and 5th innings. Saturday didn't go as well. The Cougs lost 5-1 in that one, though thankfully broke up the shutout and no-hitter thanks to some late offense in the 9th inning, and this co-host texting his other two former and current co-hosts about how Cal had a no-hitter, and it'd be a shame if the Cougs broke that up. But the Cougs finished off the weekend strong on Sunday with a 7-4 win. That I don't think that 7-4 final tells you the story of how competitive or not competitive this game was, as the Cougs were up 7-1 going into the bottom of the 9th before some last gasp offense from the Cal Bears. I think nobody should get over their skis about this series win, but also the Cougs have played 2 weekend series and have won 2 of 3 in both. And that wasn't something either of us took as a given coming into the season. And that you won this one and played considerably better than Cal in both wins. I think we hoped that would be the case, but certainly didn't take it as a given. Bobby, what are your thoughts after the Cal series? And whenever you're ready, give us your pitcher and hitter of the weekend.
Yeah, I think you and I had said we were going to do some long-term and short-term thoughts on what this is. Just kind of small picture, when this team hits, it is dangerous when they can put up 7-4. But man, when this team doesn't hit, this team does not hit, right? And we saw that in both games, or in both series. We saw it last week, and we saw it the week before opening weekend as well. don't love only having one run on Saturday, but the bats were good in the two other games, so you're not freaking out too much over that. Long term, I was looking at the scores, and then you kind of look at the pitching staffs, and you're like, the ERA really isn't that bad, but we're giving up quite a few runs. Sam, how many errors do you think we have over 6 games?
I looked at 10, right? 10 or 11.
Okay, yeah, it's 10. It's 10. Opponents are at 11. 10 feels like a lot. Now, you see the opponents are at 11 and you feel a little bit better about that, but you're giving up runs and they're unearned. You can't do that, right? You hope if there's an error, your pitcher picks you up and gets you out of the jam, but you really can't put your pitcher in that situation in the first place. And that's something that's got to be frustrating for the coaching staff, right? You're a high-level Division I baseball coach, and you're dealing with errors. That's tough, man. That's the classic false start where you're just like, there's nothing the coach can do here. I can tell you to get your butt down to the ground to field a ground ball, but you've been hearing that since you were 4. I can't, we're trying to develop other things here. So that's going to be a little frustrating for this coaching staff, but you also would like to imagine that that's early season, just kind of getting back out there, playing full speed, not playing against your own team. You're not hitting off, you're not getting fungo grounders. You're getting real grounders that take weird bounces and stuff like that. So, you hope that gets cleaned up later in the season. And if it does, man, this team has looked pretty good over the last 2 weekends. And then what were your long-term and short-term thoughts before I even go into, players, or before we dive into that, just so we can kind of keep everything tight?
Yeah, I think my big short-term thought, really fantastic job by your Sunday pitching combo of Grayson Drezek and Antoine Jean coming on relief for Drezek. Drezek was a surprise to me when he was named in the weekend rotation, but you can look at both of his starts so far and say he's done a solid job, not getting shelled or chased early, not exposing your bullpen on Sunday, which that could be very challenging for college weekend rotations when it's not really proven guys. And I think that was kind of how we felt with the staff. And Jean's performance was and his line on this one isn't bad, but it's better than it looks for the full 3 1/3 innings, because he was literally unhittable in the 6th, 7th, and 8th innings. And I really do think it's going to be the long-term thing I'm really excited about with this team. What allows me to buy in is I think Jean and Richie Roman, has 4 saves in all 4 of your wins, I think that's going to be a good 1-2 in the bullpen. You need more than a 1-2 to be a really good team, but I think I'm bought in on those 2 guys being good relievers, because they were both at different points, like flash things as starters, but they profile as the kind of guys who could be even better in like middle to short relief. And that's what I'm really excited about. That's the kind of thing that allows me to believe. I still have concerns. I mean, everything you say is with 6 games, my long-term concern with the offense. You haven't found 9 guys yet in the lineup that have really separated themselves. Like, I think it's more at this point 4 or 5, Cade Clemmy, Connor McGinnis, Trey Broussard, Aaron Lugo, and Tyler Cox. And Cox is kind of a maybe. Broussard had a good Sunday, but hasn't been very high on him. I don't want to spoil my pick here, but if anything, I think it actually strengthens how I feel about this team, because you haven't fielded too well, like you said, and you haven't found a lineup of 9 guys you love yet, and yet you're still 4-2 from 2 series against decent opponents. So that's kind of where I am in the big and little picture.
Yeah. Players wise, it was tough to kind of pick a batter and fielder this week. It wasn't like there was one guy who just kind of stood out. I do think there are 2 really good answers here. So I'm interested to hear who you're going to choose, but I'm choosing Connor McGinnis, 4 of 11 on the weekend, 4 RBIs, 2 walks. The only negative he did have 3 strikeouts on Friday, but 4 of 11 on a weekend, 2 walks. So really that's kind of 6 of 13. I like it. 4 RBIs, contributed a lot throughout the entire weekend. So that's who I had for my hitter. And then pitcher, I had Grayson Drezek, 5 innings on Sunday, 2 hits, 1 run, unearned, only 1 strikeout, so you don't love that, but had no walks. So I'd rather him have 0. If you told me I could have 0 strikeouts, but I'd have 0 walks, I'll take that all day. If the Cougs can consistently get pitching like this on Sundays, that's really good. That's kind of how you steal some series, right? You have kind of a toss up on Friday, your best pitcher, their best pitcher. Saturday, you hope that you win that one, but if you don't, and then Sunday, if you got the better pitcher, because a lot of times you see 5-6 guys going in games on Sundays, man, if you can get 5 out of your Sunday starter, that's pretty good. That's pretty good, and that's how you steal series, and that's how you end up in the NCAA championships in a regional. So,
I like that we landed on different guys for both those. Both your picks are very defensible. I kind of went out of the box with my hitter of the weekend. I went with Trey Broussard, largely in the strength of his Sunday performance. Went 3 of 5 with an RBI and 2 stolen bases in that one. You can make a very good case for Connor McGinnis, like you did. You can make a very good case for Cade Clemmy. And my original pick was actually Connor McGinnis, so I'm glad we ended up with different guys. But I went with Broussard, like I said, on the strength of that Sunday performance in the win. And he was doing the table setting for Clemmy and McGinnis, swiped a couple of bags, didn't have the best start to the season, but coming out of San Jack, he was enough of a talent playing a premium defensive position at center field that you're going to be patient. You're going to try to let this guy figure out Division I pitching, and Sunday was a glimpse of how good this guy can be. And like my pick, I'm not going to spoil yet, for pitcher of the weekend, Broussard needed a game to build some confidence and did it in a really big spot for you. Played a huge part in the Cougs being able to fly back to Houston with the road series win. So even though I think you can make a more logical case for Connor McGinnis, who had a fantastic weekend, I went with Trey Broussard there. But for my pitcher of the weekend, I went with your Friday starter, Ryan Dollar, who had 5 2/3 innings pitched, only allowed 3 hits and 1 earned run, 6 strikeouts, and maybe my favorite stat from that line, only 1 walk.
Mm-hmm.
Since you joined this show as my co-host, I've become more of a vibes guy, though I think the numbers would support my pick of Mr. Dollar in this spot because it was so crucial for this weekend series. And quite frankly, Dollar's confidence as this weekend starting pitcher because he had a really rough first start against Minnesota opening Friday where he couldn't get out of the first. Dollar showed off the swing and miss stuff that he's flashed at times in his career, but was throwing strikes, was really efficient. You aren't in the driver's seat of this series if Ryan Dollar isn't great on Friday. And that context, I think, plus the merits of the performance itself made Ryan Dollar my pick here for pitcher of the weekend. Yeah,
he was my number 2 pick.
That was good. I think you couldn't go wrong with Drezik or Dollar in that spot.
Yep. Absolutely.
So Cougs playing Sam Houston right now, currently down 3-1, but I won't spend too much time on that because it is a game that will have gone final by the time you're listening. Cougs did get some offense there in the bottom of the 5th, so we are hopeful the Cougs will find a way to beat the Bearcats of the K, but we don't worry too much about midweek baseball on this show. Like that, we are baseball knowers such that we don't worry about that. We're gonna say
it was funny. I actually had it pulled up, like it's just kind of second screening right now, and I'm just checking in occasionally when I go over to that tab, and I clicked over it, and I just watched Sam Houston just hit an absolute bomb against us, and I was like, well, all right, time to go click on another tab here. I don't want to watch that. That's not fun.
So we'll focus on the weekend series where the Cougs will go on the road for the second straight weekend. A bit short of a trip this time. We'll be playing in your neck of the woods in the Metroplex at the UT Arlington Mavericks, the program that gave us Hunter Pence and his weird fidgety swing. Mavs won a home series to open the year against a UTSA team that's pretty consistently solid under Pat Hallmark, but lost 2 in a Sunday, Monday weather-affected mini-series against the Big 12 preseason favorites, Oklahoma State. The Mavs pitching really suffered against OSU, but they did well opening weekend against UTSA where they took 2 of 3. I would think U of H, as presently constructed, kind of splits the difference between OSU and UTSA. And even if UTA's looked decent at times in this early season, I think bare minimum, you got to get the series win in Arlington. And I think for me to get really optimistic, you probably should get the series sweep. Bobby, will this be your first Cougar game at UTA that is not a women's basketball game?
Cougar game?
Yeah, I know you've seen at least a couple women's basketball games that we've talked about.
Yes, it will be my first non-women's basketball game at the in Arlington. I think I'm going to all 3. Also, DFW alums, we are having a meetup at noon on Saturday, and then we are going to the game together. So, another little shameless plug by me here.
Plug it.
But just a great opportunity to be around fellow alumni. I'm going to try to get there. I usually work on Saturdays, so it might not be as easy for me. I might cheat and go have to work on that side of town, but I'll definitely be at the games. So if you see me out there, come by, come say hey. We'll be watching it together. So, but in terms of on the field, I think you did a good job of summing it up. I don't have too many thoughts outside of the things you said. I would like to see 2 out of 3 here. A sweep would feel phenomenal. I just know how weird baseball is and how tough baseball can be to get sweeps, right? But that being said, if you want to be a regional team, if you want to cause some issues in the Big 12, I think a series win with a look at a sweep is something that you really want to get into here.
No doubt. So we'll stick with the spring sports and go to a team that is about to start Big 12 play, and that's your Cougar tennis team, where we will talk about them in Cougar Tennis Corner. So since we last talked about the Cougar tennis program on this podcast, they were back in action for the final non-conference match, at UTSA, closing out the 25 non-conference slate. I think it was a result that showed the Cougs are better than the last couple of years' teams. Cougs were more competitive in this one than they were in the previous 2 losses to UTSA, but it was quite literally a match that came down to a deciding third set tiebreaker on one of your singles courts, with both teams tied 3-3. Basically the tightest margin that a college team tennis match can be decided by, but unfortunately it was still a 4-3 loss as Hedda Newtonen, who had fought hard to get her match to a third set, won her second, fought all the way to the tiebreaker in the third, but lost that tiebreaker. 7-3, UTSA wins the match, 4-3. Was kind of a weird reversal of the SMU match previously, where in that one, the Cougars dominated on the doubles courts and then just couldn't finish the deal when it came to singles. UTSA came out much stronger in the doubles court, comfortably winning 2 of the 3 matches there to take the doubles point. We'll note this was the first spring match where we saw Eva Seppa and Hedda Newtonen competing together as doubles pairing on court 2. But the Cougars did a lot better in singles, really put pressure on the Roadrunners. Santa Strombaha won on court 1 after she had an uncharacteristically poor first set, finished it off in 3. And I think it could be sometimes pretty valuable for an athlete like Strombaha to get that bounce back mentally on a day where maybe everything is going wrong at the start. Really was happy to see her pull out the win and contribute to the Cougar team points haul. In her first spring match, not competing in doubles, Valeria Krohotina was fantastic, was the only Cougar to win her singles match in straight sets. She beat Aoka Nagasawa 6-4, 6-3 on court 6. But I think for me, maybe the most encouraging individual performance was Eva Seppa on court 2, getting her first win of the spring season, beating a really strong opponent, Ekua Yori on court 2. Like I said, she lost a tiebreaker in set 2 after winning the first set 6-4. And when you're trying to get your first win of the spring, that can be really deflating. And credit to Eva. She played her best tennis in the third set, finished off Yori, and cut the UTSA lead to 3-2. Unfortunately, Morosova and Skoten lost close second sets to lose their matches. Everywhere you looked other than doubles, unfortunately, the margins in this match were super tight. And after Strombaha won her singles match to tie it at 3, UTSA, like I said a minute ago, won on court 3, the tiebreaker against Hedda Newtonen. So frustrating to come up close, but I would have only been really disappointed here if U of H didn't compete, and you did, and just won by about the tightest margin you could against a solid opponent.
Yeah, it was. It's just exciting to see close matches again with the tennis team. So that's what's got me kind of excited about this tennis season. And my podcast partner is a huge tennis fan, so I'm getting updates constantly, and so I'm just following it a little bit more and more every single time.
Appreciate you, bud. I was gonna say, as someone who's physically out there for Cougar tennis, so you should give yourself more credit as a supporter of the team.
Yes, sir.
So up next, the Cougs will open Big 12 play this week with 2 road matches. We'll get I think, could be the toughest one out of the way first on Friday evening at current national number 25, Oklahoma State. This will be a homecoming for Cougar head coach Kat Adamovich, who was an All-American player for the Cowgirls from 2014 to 17, was part of the teams that really propelled OSU from being a solid Big 12 program to one of the very best in the country. I would say her role in the rise of OSU Cowgirls tennis, it's very comparable. If you want to, as a Cougar fan, have a comparison point, I think very comparable to Rob Gray and Galen Robinson's role in U of H men's basketball becoming a next level team. She was a very good foundational player and is now obviously a rising star. As a college head coach, I think it's cool she gets to bring a team back to her old stomping grounds in Stillwater. As of recording, OSU, the preseason favorite to win the league, is ranked behind the likes of Baylor and Texas Tech. I do think that's at least in some part. Their 6-5 record is more indicative of a brutal early season schedule. They played in the ITA kickoff weekend, which is a selection of the best teams in the country. They played in the indoor ITA national championships. Obviously, a lot of very good teams there as well, in addition to playing non-conference roadies at Michigan and Ohio State. So 6-5, but 6-5 against a selection of some of the very best teams in the country. So
yeah, still doing well in the tennis net ratings.
Yeah, exactly. Junior Anastasia Komar for OSU is number 88 ranked singles player in the country, has been the Cowgirls player on court one for most of the spring season. I would expect her and Strombaha will face off there. They're not guaranteed. I would say her 1-4 record there is more of, again, an indicative of playing extremely tough slate of opponents rather than any lack of skill. On her part, Gracie Epps is having a great sophomore season. She's the current number 44 ranked singles player and has a 5-4 record this spring, mostly playing on court 3. We'll also mention freshman Rosemary Niekamp and 89th ranked Marcelo Lopez to be singles opponents the Cougars see on Friday night. We'll also mention in doubles, Komar and Niekamp are ranked 72nd nationally, and Epps and Lopez are ranked 73rd. Really good opponent. This is a purely house money kind of match, and kind of just seeing how you stack up against one of the better teams in the sport, a standard bearer of Big 12 women's tennis. Not that I'm not interested in this one, but the one I really have my eye on is Sunday at K-State, who coming into the week is number 73 nationally in the latest ITA rankings. Quality opponent. One, the Cougars will have to play good tennis to beat, but I would also say a little more realistic in terms of the Cougars actually having a chance to potentially win this one as compared to your opener at OSU. The Wildcats and Cougars have one common non-conference opponent. They both played Rice, who Rice is currently inside the national top 50. Would say both matches were similarly competitive. When it came to the Owls, K-State did get a point, but we'll also note they were playing at home, and I think if the Cougars had been allowed to finish all the singles matches, they would have come up with at least 1 point against the Owls. K-State does not have any nationally ranked players. I expect Strombaha will likely face her fellow German sophomore Charlotte Keitel on court 1. Another K-State sophomore, Marglu Chugsumjau, leads the Wildcats with 4 singles wins in the spring season so far, splits her time between courts 2 and 3. The key here will be courts 1 and 2, because the Wildcats have struggled there at times. If Strombaha and Eva Sepa can come out like they did against UTSA, the Cougs also don't go missing in doubles like they did in that UTSA match. You can really start to put pressure on the Wildcats. They'll be coming off a tough conference opener as well. They'll be playing UCF. Winning here, like I said a minute ago, is still going to require the Cougars playing very good tennis, but it's also not unrealistic they could win this, and it would be very nice to get that first conference win early in the season because Big 12 tennis is very rugged. It's not unrealistic here, but again, say for the umpteenth time, you're going to have to play good tennis to get it.
Yeah, I think anytime you have a chance to go against a ranked team, a top 75 team, it's going to be a great way for U of H to see where they stand. If you play them close, you feel pretty good considering last year you didn't do anything that made you think you were going to play a team like Oklahoma State or Kansas State close. If you can win a couple of points out there, I think that's pretty exciting for the progress that this team has made, in even 1 year.
Fully agreed. So we're closed out tonight. Last but certainly not least, stick with the country club sports because both the Cougar men's and women's golf teams were back in action. So we'll venture to a little peaceful nook that we like to call Cougar Golf Corner.
Well, let's start with the Cougar men's golf team. I don't remember. I remember vaguely talking about it, but I don't know if it was completely finished last week. So let's go through the men's Border Olympics tournament that they host in Laredo. Again, I remember we talked about it, but I don't know if it went final before we had talked about it. It might have, so this might be a complete redo. But the Cougs finished T2 in the tournament. They were I want to say the only ranked team. Let me double check. Yep, at number 47, finishing T2, 6 strokes off of Louisiana. Who had 2 guys just kind of go off and do really well. They had 2 guys tie for third. But U of H in this tournament finishes 6 back, like I said, and just had some good rounds from guys. You had Chi Chun Chin, who finished 6th overall on the player leaderboard with a even par. Then you have Wolfgang Glow finishing in 21st. Jacob Boro finishes 27th, and then you have Loren Schreigen finishes in 8th, falls pretty hard in the final round with 3 over. He goes from 1st to 8th. Not great. That doesn't feel great if you are the Houston Cougars or if you're Lawrence. So nothing to be too ashamed about in this tournament. You did drop a couple of spots in the standings with this. You went from 47 to 49, I want to say. Again, nothing you are freaking out about or nothing that you're too upset about. So finishing second here, solid performance there. And then if you go to UH Cougars, they are showing a tournament that the Cougars are playing in. It is all individuals, and to be honest with you, this is a tournament that is just getting guys used to playing and keeping them in form. I like to say tournament golf is way different than just going out and playing practice rounds. They played in an NAIA tournament, funny enough, that included Texas Wesleyan, Houston Victoria, Texas A&M.
Shout out, keeping in the U of H system.
Yeah, love that. And this was hosted by UH Victoria. So probably how U of H has got individuals to play in this. Sam, did you know that there's a Texas A&M in San Antonio?
I did not actually.
Now you do. Okay. Blinn is in this tournament. We got Blender Gardeners. Jacksonville, which is in Texas, Jacksonville College. Couldn't have told you that existed either. But Cougars sent out a bunch of individuals. Some of the guys kind of lower on your roster, guys who may not make the tournament 5, and you absolutely dominated this tournament. Brian Hiskey goes out, ties for first place. Ruben Lindsay finishes in 3rd. Grant Doggett finishes in 4th. You have Hoisin Yi Chin for U of H finishing in 8th, right? If U of H was participating as a team, they would have won it running away, which you would hope in an NAIA tournament, but still good to see that the Cougs went out and performed well. So always good to see that. So that's going to be men's golf. And then we did have the Houston women's golf team participate in the Chevron Collegiate, and U of H hosted that one. That was the one that we were kind of talking about with Coach, and that I kind of encouraged everyone to go out to because it's just kind of fun to go out. This was a absolutely stacked tournament. You had, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ranked teams in this tournament, including number 1 Arkansas. And the Cougs, you would have liked to see finish a little bit better. Finish 7th. The only unranked team, only one unranked team finished ahead of them, but everyone who came into this tournament ranked ahead of them, finished ahead of them, and they didn't upset anybody, and they were pretty far off the leaders here. TCU, conference mate, who's just kind of had U of H's number this year, both in the fall and the spring. They seem to just have one up on U of H for some reason. Finishes at 34 under. U of H finishes at 13 under. So pretty big gap there. In fact, TCU blew everybody out. They won by 9 strokes over A&M. Arkansas, they beat Arkansas by 10 strokes at minus 24. SMU, who was a team ranked below U of H, who finished ahead of U of H, finished at 19 under. Mississippi State also was at 19 under. So, could have been better for the Cougs, if we're being honest. But individual performances, you had Natalie St. Germain finish in 38th, but you did have Alexis Saldana finish in top 15, finish in 12th place, and then Malin Kim, Hyoji Kang finish in 31st position. So you'd like to see the Cougs do better at their home tournament on a course that they play and practice on, that their facilities at. You would think that they'd have an upper hand on a lot of things. Something that I've just kind of noticed in tournaments, round one, the Cougs seem to struggle, right? The leaders after round one were at 11 under, and the Cougs were at even par. Kind of struggle there. Put yourself behind the 8 ball, so to speak. Then the Cougs come out and they always do well in the second round. The second 18 on that first day, they seem to do pretty well. Finished 7 off the leaders on that round. Sounds like it warmed up a little bit, but finished really well. And then in round 3, finished 4 under. You had TCU go 15 under. You had some low scores on round 3, but U of H did well there. If the Cougs can figure out round 1 and figure out what's going on there, I think this team, I'm not off the bandwagon yet. I'm not jumping, anything like that. But Cougs going from 21, I wouldn't be surprised to see them drop to 23, 24, where they were to kind of start the season.
Yeah, it feels like not a catastrophic tournament or anything like that. Like, you're still around the pack, but would have been more like to be in that pack with TCU, A&M, Arkansas, SMU, and Mississippi State.
You'd like to see yourself closer to that pack. You're kind of out of that pack by 10. If you're out of that pack by 3, 4, it happens, but at that level, that was quite a bit.
Yeah. Frustrating, but also we're talking 4 strokes. Like, you could see that getting made up in a future tournament.
Oh yeah, easy.
So that's it for us, Bobby. Why don't you take us home?
All right, well, that's it for this week. My God, we have talked a lot about Cougar sports over the last 90 minutes. If you have any feedback for us, you can find us on social media at podcast.bsky.social on Blue Sky. If you are on Twitter, or X as it's now known, we do check that occasionally. I will occasionally post over there, no problem. Sam will as well, but it's not our primary spot anymore. But you can find us over there at SH Podcast. If you love the work that we do, you can, if you want to get rid of all social media and you want to send us an email, we are way open to that as well. You can email us at shpodcast@gmail.com. Second time the email is getting shouted out in an episode. That's awesome. shpodcast@gmail.com. We do listen to your feedback. We might not do anything with it, but we will read it. We will discuss it and talk about it. And then if you want to support the work Sam and I do, just this basic podcast, we do provide premium episodes of all different things. We're going to do some cool stuff with March Madness, I think. And you can find us on Patreon at SH Podcast over there as well. We appreciate you. We appreciate all of our Patreon supporters. And as always, Sam,
go Cougs.
All right. Go Cougs. Let's go. I like it.